This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Dear friends all over the world, I have a special invitation for you. You might have heard me talk about this in the past episodes, but last summer I finally made my dream true and started Thank You Mama creative writing workshops. And they absolutely surpassed all my expectations. The energy, the magic we created were healing and empowering and just wonderful. So the next workshop is taking place on the weekend of 9th to 11th of June in Vienna. It will include a guided tour through this gorgeous imperial city, a visit to the Art History Museum, lots of creative writing, discussions, and meditations. We will write about our mothers' lives and lessons, but also about our needs and about what we can give ourselves to be the best, happiest versions of ourselves. You can find more information on my website. I will put a link in episode notes. Or please feel free to just shoot me a mail. You'll find it in episode notes as well. You can also reach to me over social media. I would be happy to help you with arrangements and ideas of what else to explore. There is a ton to see and experience in Vienna, but also Prague, Budapest, Munich, and Venice are a few hours on the train away from here. Also, I am relaunching the Thank You Mama newsletter and filling it with information and inspiration I am super excited about and would really love to share with you. You'll find a subscription link in episode notes on my website or in my Instagram link in bio. And finally, if you're enjoying the show and haven't done so yet, please give it 5 stars and a review. It's simple and quick, but it really helps the show to be discovered and to grow. Thank you so much for being here. And here's this week's beautiful conversation. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Wendy Battles. Wendy is a cybersecurity awareness expert and a change management specialist at the Yale University. But even more interesting for me is Wendy is the podcast host of Reinvention Rebels, a podcast for women 50 to 90 years young, as Wendy said, ready to reinvent themselves. Wendy, hi and welcome.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I am very, very excited because at this stage, I interviewed women from 60 countries and did 120 interviews. And one of the lessons they very often talk about is one of my favorite lessons, which I learned from my mom. And it's exactly your passion project. It's reinventing yourself, but especially later in life. And I'm learning from these moms from all over the world that it's never too late. I've learned about Chinese moms who started their businesses at 55 and moms who took over their husbands' businesses in their 60s and women who fell in love in their 70s and so many women who reinvented themselves. And what I very often hear is, they're happier than ever. So I'm very excited to talk to you and hear about your experiences and your podcast and what your guests are telling you.
Well, they are telling me all kinds of things. So I'll just back up a little bit and share a little context for how I started as a podcaster and how I birthed this idea of Reinvention Rebels. I have spent every decade from my 30s on, so my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, I'm now 58, trying to figure out what am I meant to do. So I've always had jobs where I've been very successful, but I also felt like there's something more. And I have reinvented myself many times, like most of us have. I'm sure, Anna, you probably have reinvented yourself as well, which one day you're going to tell me about your story. So I was, in a searching mode. And in my 30s, I reinvented myself as a voice actor. In my 40s, I reinvented myself as a health coach. But though both of those things never really panned out, like I tried them and I was only so successful. And I probably gave up too soon, but it just wasn't the right fit. I wasn't passionate about it in the right way. But in my 50s, I was like, okay, Anna, this is it. I need to figure out what I'm meant to do. And I had been asked to be a guest on, as part of a panel at Yale for our future leaders of Yale. And it was about personal branding. And I thought, what do I know about personal branding? So I started listening to all these podcasts about it. And one of the podcasts I came across that I loved was called Package Your Genius. Mm-hmm. And just doesn't the name alone sound just like, ooh, I want to package my genius, right?
Yeah.
And the premise is to figure out that there is something that we all shine at. And we need to figure it out. So I love the podcast. I bought the woman's book. I started going through her workbook. I started really thinking about, what do I love to do? What energizes me? What am I really passionate about? And I love working with women, because when I was a health coach, I worked with women, and I love empowering women. I love to see women shining and being their best selves. And I layered this idea of working with women with this narrative that we have in our society about the value of women as we age and how our value declines according to society, which of course I don't believe, and I'm guessing you probably don't either. So I thought, what if there was a way to showcase women who have reinvented themselves and are finding their purpose and, really living on purpose in bold ways? I want to talk to those women. I'd like to share their stories, and I'd like to use this as a vehicle to inspire other women about what's possible. So you and I, we have such similar missions about what we're trying to do, right? This idea of inspiring women to be their best, most amazing selves. And that's really how it started. And then one day I was meditating after I was doing all this work to this really a lot of self-reflection. One day I literally heard Reinvention Rebels as I was meditating. And I thought, what is Reinvention Rebels? But as I continued to be quiet and I leaned more into it, I realized that Reinvention Rebels was this podcast. And that's how the seed was planted in me to, create this podcast. And mind you, I didn't know anything about podcasting, but what's interesting
Sounds familiar.
is that, right? But I figured it out as you have done. And I really use, though, my experience as a voice actor is really helpful in this. My experience with all the writing and speaking I do in all my different jobs has been part of this. So it's interesting that many of my prior reinventions have figured into this current and my best reinvention yet. And I'll simply say that the women I interview are truly remarkable women who are interesting and inspiring, who are doing amazing things. And I'll tell you this one thing, that the number one episode of all the episodes I've done is someone who was my therapist many years ago in the 90s. And she was always unathletic, non-athletic, was really heavy and overweight. But when she was in her 50s, mid-50s, she started running. And she'd never run before. She started running, and then she started running in like local races, just like 5Ks. And then it increased to 10Ks and half marathons. And now at 72 years old, or years young, she says she's in the best shape of her life ever.
That's incredible.
Ever, right? And she's running marathons around the world. So that to me is such an inspiring reinvention story. It reminds me that anything is possible, really, for any of us. We all can learn to shine and find that perfect fit.
Do you have favorite lessons or messages you've learned through all these interviews and episodes you've done until now that you would share with my listeners?
I do. I've got several. One is do it scared and do it anyway. There are so many things that are scary. And I know that reinventing ourselves or trying something new can be scary. But one of the common threads is that these women, might have felt fearful about some parts of reinventing themselves, but they just went for it. And even if you go for it and it doesn't work out exactly the way you want, there are lessons in all of that. And sometimes the lessons are detours that are steering us toward that bigger mission we might have. So do it scared, do it anyway is number one. Number two is self-permission. One of the things I love is that these women have given themselves permission to grow and evolve. They've decided it's my time. It's my time to shine. It is my time to focus on what I want, because many of us have been focused on raising children or our careers or many other things that we women often do, but to our own detriment, because we have turned the focus away from ourselves to focus on others. And I think it says something really juicy when women are like, I want to shine a light on myself. I want to dig deep and see what I can find. And one of the women that did that, her name is Natalie. She's now 62, I think. She retired early and decided to travel around the world by herself with just one carry-on bag. And she just gave herself permission to retire early and, made the necessary changes to her budget to be able to do so. And then she went on this trip, which was really life-changing. And then she said, well, now I want to move abroad. I want to retire abroad. And she literally just a few months ago moved to Portugal and has created this new life. As you talk about reinvention, has reinvented herself in this really affirming way, this way that I can do anything and I can be anything. And I would say that the third thing and the third theme is this idea of letting go and trusting. It's like trusting that everything is unfolding in just the right way as I take these steps and I get out there, that things are unfolding. And that I will continue down this path. So instead of trying to control everything, which I know many of us do, like myself, they are really open to having trust and faith that things are evolving in just the right way as they reinvent. So do it scared, do it anyway. Self-permission and faith and trust.
I love this. It's like you said, our projects seem different, but they are so similar in its foundation or in their foundations. And these are the messages I hear a lot in my interviews as well. But here's something I'm curious about. Here, the manager, the MBA in me wants to ask you a question, because one of my first projects when I started my corporate, as we said, I also reinvented myself. I used to have a corporate career, and one of my first projects was change management. We were introducing a very, very big new technology, CRM technology in our company, and that was a big change and it had to be managed. So when I read that you are a change management specialist, I was wondering, is that in any way connected to reinventing yourself? Because it's change and kind of managing that.
I think it's completely related because, as you know, from doing, CRM kind of projects where you're creating this change, that you have to tell people about it. They have to adapt. You have to communicate. You have to sometimes they need training, that kind of thing. And I think it's the same thing for ourselves, right? If we want to embark on a new journey, in this case, a reinvention journey, we have to communicate to ourselves. We have to, convince ourselves. We have to remind ourselves that we can do it. We have to create a plan and be able to see, what that's going to look like. We have to sometimes get new training. And Anna, this is a perfect example of both you and me. We had to figure out how to be podcast hosts. So we reinvented ourselves, right? In this way. Well, I didn't know naturally. So what did I do? I took this course, the self-paced course. And that was how I figured it out. But that's no different than introducing a new technology to, people in an organization, right? Your employees, which I've done with like Oracle and
Yeah.
Workday. I've been part of these
Yeah.
really big implementations where we had to prepare people, communicate, get them ready, train them, coach them. So sometimes I'm coaching myself about how I can do this. Or maybe it's about getting help. Like maybe I can't do it all, but who else could help me toward this goal? So just like we might coach people in the workplace, right? We can do the same thing for ourselves, either self-coaching or hiring a professional to help us, all toward that goal. So I think change management is inherent to reinventing ourselves.
Isn't it beautiful how topics connect and all your experiences in life somehow come together at one point? That's beautiful.
Amazing.
It's fantastic.
Right?
It's magical. Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? But yet it is. Like, right? It's happening. So yeah, I totally believe it's possible.
Everything has a purpose and its reason, as my mom used to tell me. She said, try it all, do it all. You never know how it will all come together. And it does.
Yeah.
And it did. But let's talk about mom.
Yeah.
Normally I ask for mom's name. I didn't ask you for your mom's name. Tell us her name.
Her name is Elaine Battles.
Okay.
Yeah. Elaine.
Where is she from?
Well, she grew up in Georgia but moved all over with my dad and lived in different places, but now lives in not like 10 minutes from me in Connecticut where I live. And she's now 90.
That's incredible. How is she doing?
Yeah, I think that she's an amazing person, but age is catching up with her a little bit. So she has some, different health conditions now that have been a challenge, but but her spirit is strong and like her mind is so strong. And, she has doesn't have many memory issues. So what's really a gift is that I get to really still be connected to her so deeply. I know so many of my friends have parents with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, and I'm really grateful. And in fact, I interviewed her last year on the Reinvention Rebels podcast. That has been one of the most popular episodes. And I really talked to her about how she's reinvented herself in different ways over the years.
To tell us about it. Tell me her story.
Well, it's an interesting story. And like many people, she's reinvented herself in different ways at different times. But probably the biggest reinvention was when my parents got divorced. And, she was in her mid-50s. So, around my age, not that far from your age, and kind of starting over. But my mom had always worked and had a professional career. So it wasn't sort of starting over and trying to figure out completely who I am. But just navigating the world in a different way after being married to my dad for 35 years, that's a big change. And, just how she navigated some of those things and then really created an incredibly full life. My mom has a lot of different interests and many different friends, and she's never let anything stop her. When she's wanted to do something, she's figured out how. And one of the things she's always told me is there's always a way. There's always a way forward to figure something out, even if it seems like we can't at that moment. Sometimes things aren't clear and it seems hard to navigate. But she always reminded me that there's always a path forward. Sometimes you just have to get quiet and, work on your discernment skills to see it. So that's been a really powerful lesson for me.
I want to go back to her a little. What you said, she was a professional. She had a career. What did she do?
She was a professional fundraiser. When I was little, my mom didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she drove us around to our activities. But in junior high, she got a job at our local United Way as the director. And, she was focused on raising money, and she really parlayed that into a fundraising career. So when I was 15, we moved to Minnesota for my dad's job, and she got a job at the University of Minnesota as a fundraiser in the School of Engineering. So that's how it kind of got started. And then she went from there to the University of Illinois, and then she got a job at Stanford University in California, and she moved. After my parents had gotten divorced, she moved to California.
Oh, she moved to California in her late 50s.
Yeah, she did. And she started over, she
Amazing.
literally started over as a fundraiser at Stanford and then worked for a consulting firm. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
she's always been able to make things work
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
while moving forward, with a positive attitude,
Mm-hmm.
never a defeatist, I can't do this,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
the attitude of, it might be tough, but I can figure it out.
I want to ask you two things. How many children did she have?
Two. So I have an older brother. Yeah.
And so when she started working, how old was she? You said you were in junior high. So what, for my
hmm
international listeners, what does that translate?
Yeah. So she was in her 40s, I think.
Oh, amazing. So she started in her 40s. Okay.
Yeah, because she had been, right out of college, she worked and she was like a social worker, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. I mean, she went to the School of Home Economics, which I don't have anymore, at Drexel University, which is in Philadelphia, in
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. And so she started off, with jobs like that, like working in the welfare department for some city where they lived.
Mm-hmm.
But then when, my brother was born, I think she stopped working
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I will say this too, when she wasn't working, when she was, really a stay-at-home mom, she was very involved. So even though she wasn't getting a paycheck, she has always been involved in the community. She was the chair of the board of our local YWCA, this community organization. She did a lot of volunteering. She organized this huge awards banquet for an organization that was called Twin, Tribute to Women in Industry. So she's always done things, even if she wasn't necessarily getting a paycheck. She was always sort of developing along the way, even as a stay-at-home mom, because I know sometimes people can get into that mode of they're so wrapped up in their kids,
Mm-hmm.
but she was always, doing things with us, but also adding value in the community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that was an interesting path. And I think one of the lessons I've learned is definitely this idea of giving back, that it's so important to give back to our community and, share the gifts that you have with other people, basically to make the world a better place, even if it's in a small way.
I love it how we already slipped into lessons. Yeah. But it's nice how sometimes when you talk about your mother's life, that lessons just swim out to the surface. So you mentioned that if you really want to do something, you will find time and you'll make time to do it as a lesson, and also giving back to the community. What are other lessons you learned from her?
Well, one of the lessons that I will never, ever forget is quality over quantity. That it's better to have one or two really good things, like maybe a piece of clothing that's really high quality, than a closet full of, things that might fall apart. Like maybe you have a whole bunch of them, but they're not that well made. So she was always a fan of quality over quantity, which can manifest, by the way, in many different ways, from something that's, like a material, like, a piece of clothing, to even friendships.
Yes.
She always said, it's so powerful to have a few close friends as opposed to having tons of, maybe acquaintances. But who are the people that are always there for you? And I remember that because when I was 3 in nursery school, I met my best friend, literally, who to this day is still my best friend.
Oh, that's so cute. I thought I won because I met my best friend when I was 7 or so. But
that's
it's
still
incredible.
A very long time.
You met
right?
yours at 3, yeah.
So for 54 years, we have been best friends. We have moved, we've, traveled and all this. We are still she's like a sister that I never had. I've never had a sister. She's like my sister.
Yeah, soul sister.
Soul sister all the way. And so I think, so that's just a great example of that quality over quantity, because I do know a lot of people, but all those people aren't my closest friends. So I have this really tight group of people that know everything about me, that I can always count on. And that's that quality over quantity that she was talking about. So that was a really important lesson that has manifested in many different ways over my lifetime that I'll never forget. So that's been an important one.
When you're talking about this, I'm trying to translate that to my professional life. I think this is what I'm trying to do in my professional life. And maybe it's not always good because that can tend towards being a perfectionist.
Oh, yes.
Doing things with quality, doing things you can stand behind really, really matters.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
And she also told me about really making 110% effort in whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're going to do something, don't just do it halfway, go all the way. Do like a really quality job. Because I know that I can have perfectionist tendencies too. And I have to kind of balance this idea of you want to make forward progress and not get so stuck in the details that you get mired in the details that you're not moving forward. And so it's sort of a balance. But, she always reminded me, though, if you're going to do something, do a great job. Like put in the effort to do great work, which I think is reflected in the podcast. Like I spend a huge amount of time, as I know you do too.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love, because I want it to be great. Like I want it to be inspiring. I want people to listen and be inspired. So I don't want it to be, so quality. I want it to be excellent quality. So I really embrace this idea of I'm willing to put in the effort and the time.
But it's really important, as you say, as we talked about, balancing between high quality and perfectionism. Because for me, one of the revolutionary things I heard was at one of the podcasting conference, somebody said they wrote a book called Do It Messy, about just doing things, even if you do them messy. And I wrote a post-it for myself, which I still have stuck on my desk, that says do it messy, because I would often use my perfectionism as an excuse to not do things because I'm scared, to feed my imposter syndrome, using this perfectionism to be like, oh, I really have to do this perfectly because I'm not good enough. And I'm training myself to just do it. But of course, speaking of quality, you want to be able to stand behind things. So it's this balance that I think is very, very important.
I agree. And, we're very similar in that way, that I can tend toward that same thing. And, you have to be able to take action. You can't wait till everything is, so perfect. Yeah. So I've leaned into much more so this idea of doing it scared and just getting out there. And
it's similar. It's very similar.
Right? It's very similar. And in fact, that's the theme of this season. I'm on season 5 of the podcast. And the theme is do it scared, do it anyway. Because otherwise, I don't want to have those regrets like, well, what if the what ifs? What if I tried it? I'd much rather try it and it doesn't work out, or I learn important lessons that could help me do it in a different way. So maybe it's not the way I envisioned, but maybe that's what I needed to be steered in the right direction. So I would much rather do it scared than to not do it at all.
Exactly. And we had one more lesson, which is about little things in life. Tell me about this. That was my mom's lesson as well.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
It got me focused on appreciating the little things. And it wasn't so much about having material stuff. You can have those things, but it doesn't necessarily make you happy. But the little things, like that treasured friendship, or getting to go on a trip somewhere, having a new experience, having a great meal with somebody. It doesn't have to be even super expensive or cost anything. It's those little things that really make life meaningful. It's those little things that help us be connected to one another, because to me, it's the connection that makes life meaningful, right? That we have connections with other people, whether it's friends or spouse or our boss or whoever it might be. It doesn't even matter. But that when we can appreciate those small things, having great health. I think now that my mom's health is failing, she's appreciating even more that she spent so many years being healthy, that she's 90, and for 88 of her 90 years, she was incredibly healthy, which is amazing. So she always appreciated that, but now even more so. Always the little things. She always encouraged me to think about the little things. It's not always this big, I'm going to get X. And because sometimes I certainly have discovered in my own life, when you do get X, that thing that you thought you wanted, that might be that big thing.
Yeah.
That things don't really make us happy. At least not for me.
Yeah.
I think one of the things it's taught me is to really value experiences over things, or do something really fun that's experiential as opposed to getting a new car or something that, I mean, that's nice and it's convenient. But at the big scheme of things, all I need is a car that gets me safely to where I need to go. It doesn't need to be like the fanciest car. And I'd rather put my money into something that's about having a new experience I've never had before, or going somewhere new, or meeting new people. And that to me is part of that idea of the little things. And if you can appreciate the little things, it really does make life feel more meaningful.
It does. I was trying to practice this today because what I always found very inspiring about my mom was she had a very, very nice, to be fair, supermarket across the street. And that supermarket was there for, 10 years, 20 years of her life. She would go there every single day. And every time she walked in, you would think she walked into Disneyland or Wonderland or I don't know, Versailles, Every single day she walked in and she's like, and she would stroll through it and discover new things and be excited about this, bar of chocolate or, and talk to people working there and look at this wonderful fruit and vegetables and choose the best. And I always thought this is so incredible, this everyday life, this mundane thing that for her somehow was, this magnificent journey.
That.
So I just saw, unfortunately, when something pops up on your Instagram and you don't click on it and then you lose it, either Atlantic or New York or somebody published an article about it. It's like, how about, finding the joy in your local supermarket? So today I was walking through my local supermarket and I'm like, this is going to be a journey today. And it was fun,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was fun. Looking into all these Easter bunnies was amazing today. I found a white chocolate and strawberry Easter bunny. How awesome is this? Yeah.
Yum.
Anyway, it's I absolutely agree with you, and this is something I learned from my mom, and I'm trying to really nurture this joy in these everyday things, because that's what really matters. Anyway, beautiful lesson. Thank you for sharing that. Do we have more you'd like to share, or should we jump on to the next topic?
I think I've exhausted all the things that I can think of off the top of my head in terms of the lessons.
Yeah, but then let me ask you the also beautiful question. Is there something she was not able to teach you, something important that you had to learn yourself?
Well, I think I had to learn the difficulty of things not working out the way you want them to. And I know that, our parents or mentors or people can tell us, well, life is difficult and things aren't always going to work out the way you want them. So they can tell us that in theory, of course. But that's a lesson I feel like you have to learn on your own to truly understand what that means. And so as much as she could sometimes tell me that, I had to experience it to know what it feels like for something to fail and then to rise from that and create something else. But one of the things I've learned that she didn't teach me, but I've learned from experience, is that failures and challenges are opportunities. They're opportunities to grow. They're opportunities to go in a different direction. They're opportunities to uncover more about ourselves. And I learned that the hard way, of course, by things not going the way that I wanted them to sometimes, and not everything just falling into place. And then having to figure out, well, how do you reroute from here and, restart when something doesn't work out the way you want? Because you say, oh, honey, it's going to work out in the end. But
yeah, it's going to work out.
Our parents will be our cheerleaders and encourage us. But at the time, you're devastated. And you're thinking,
how? I can't see it.
Right. And I think that even when we moved from New Jersey, where I grew up, to Minnesota when I was in ninth grade, I was about 15, and I left all of my friends to move to this really cold place. It was in the middle of the winter. And I was so heartbroken. And she said, "Oh, it's going to be okay. It'll all work out." And I was like, "No, it's not." You know how it is. It's like, it just felt like the world was ending.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to individually learn, like, even when we have that feeling like the world is ending and it is so disappointing or devastating, we can still rise from that situation. We just have to find our path. But when you're 15, I mean, what do you know about any of these things? You don't know. You kind of figure it out. I mean, when you're a lot older, you have so much more wisdom and experience. So it's obviously easier to navigate disappointments, and you understand it's part of life. But when you're younger, you're just like, I don't want to move. So I think I've learned, that's something she didn't teach me, but I've learned on my own, is how to kind of recover from some of those disappointments.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wendy,
My pleasure.
I'd like to recap, but we have so much. I don't know how we can recap all of these wisdoms you've shared. Let's try very quickly. So we spoke about your work with women between 50 and 90 reinventing themselves and what you've learned from them. And I have 3 beautiful quick lessons, which is do it scared, but do it anyway. Give yourself self-permission. And to let go and to trust.
Yes.
I love those. And then we spoke about Mom Elaine. So we learned to give back to community, even in small ways, but just to give back, to appreciate little things in life. What a beautiful lesson. To concentrate on quality over quantity. And that when something is really important for you, you just make time for it. You find time for things you want to do. Did I miss anything?
You got it. You got them all.
I need your help with something. I wrote something that really, but I didn't write everything. I said, get quiet and see it. That was when she was talking about about that lesson, about when something is important, you will find a way to do it. Is it?
Yes.
Finding this vision, getting quiet and finding the vision of what you want to achieve.
Yeah. And I think that's what I've applied, within my own life through meditation. Yes. It helps me get to that place where, I think we all have wisdom. And I think that if we all slow down and listened more, it wouldn't have to be, our path forward wouldn't have to be so hard.
No.
Because I feel like we have many answers inside.
We do. We just have to meet ourselves, allow ourselves to meet ourselves and hear ourselves.
Exactly. Yes.
That's a topic for a completely new episode. And something that you wish she taught you was navigating disappointments. I want to put it as easy, as simple as that. And this is, as you said, something you can't be taught, something you just have to learn through life.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was beautiful, Wendy. Thank you again for being my guest.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure, Anna. I mean, it was so awesome, and I loved it.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider. That's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.